Space, the final frontier. These are the podcasts of the podcast Enterprise. Its only mission to explore story structures, to analyze our favorite characters and plot lines, to boldly talk about what everyone has seen before. Hello and welcome everyone to Podcast Enterprise. This is a podcast where we watch Star Trek the original series episodes and dissect it for story structure. My name is Bala Ramudurai. I am the host, and with me I have my co-host Parvati Ramkumar. Say hello, Parvati.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Podcast Enterprise, where you'll discover an episode and wonder what you just watched.
You just described our episode for the day. What? Dwiddly dum dwiddly do? What is it called? I forget now.
I think that would be a better title.
Because at the end your brain is in such a knot that you've completely forgotten what was all that about. Omega Glory, I think, is the official title, but we will stick with Dwiddly dum dwiddly do. So, Parvati, your summary now, please.
When this episode opens, the USS Enterprise is orbiting a planet called Omega 4, and it's also getting close to a ship called the USS Exeter, which has had some sort of problem with communication and it has gone offline, and the Federation wants to know what happened. Kirk, along with a landing party that consists of himself, McCoy, and Spock, board the USS Exeter along with Lieutenant Galloway, and they find the ship is completely deserted. But after they do a bit of preliminary examinations, they find that it's not deserted. They find that the members of this ship are actually dead, and all of the water has been drained out of their body, reducing them to just some kind of crystalline dust material. The surgeon's log they find tells them there is an infection aboard, and the only way to avoid any sort of death, the same fate, is to have themselves beamed down to this planet. That's the only way. And the captain of the USS Exeter is also down on that planet. So Kirk and the landing party cannot go back to the USS Enterprise, so they beam down to Omega 4. There they find Captain Ronald Tracy, who is the captain of the USS Exeter. And here's where things get a little bit bizarre, because they come to a village square. They find one set of people, one group of aliens, attempting to behead another group of humanoid aliens. The aliens in charge seem to be more Far Eastern in appearance. They are very humanoid. And the other group of aliens, the supposed savages, look like Europeans. The aliens in power are the Kohms and the others are the Yangs. Captain Kirk finds that Captain Tracy is a little off in the head. He's looking for immortality. There is something in the planet's atmosphere that protects all of them from disease. According to Captain Tracy, the Kohms are living for thousands of years. He wants that kind of longevity for himself, but he also takes a dislike to Kirk and has him imprisoned. While in prison, Kirk manages to befriend some of the Yangs. He also gets beaten up quite often, as we'll see in this episode. There are a lot of fistfights. Once he's out of that prison, he finds that the Yangs have some sort of obsession with freedom, which ties into the American Constitution, and the Kohms are communists. He manages to bring both these groups together in a very strange turn of events. Back to you, Bala.
Yes, so let me try with the 4-act structure. Thanks, Parvati. That was a difficult job to do. Summarize the whole episode into a few minutes. We start off with USS Exeter non-responsive in the teaser, and what leaves you on a cliffhanger is you have uniforms with those crystals in them. So how have they disappeared? Nobody knows. That's how the teaser is built up, with a lot of suspense, not knowing what happened to the crew of the Exeter. In the first act, they find out that it's just not that people have vanished, people actually died. That's what McCoy figures out. And surgeon's log reveals that they have to beam down to the planet. So rest of the act is about them beaming to the planet and finding bizarre stuff going on. At two places I thought the act had ended, but turns out it hadn't. This is one of the few episodes that I had to refer to Memory Alpha to figure out whether the act had really ended or was just a fake end. The act does end when they find Captain Ron Tracy and he kills Lieutenant Galloway. That's the end of the first act. The end of the first false act was when infection keeps them at the planet forever. The revelation that they have to stay there forever and there's no chance they're beaming back aboard the Enterprise. So that was the fake first act end, and the real first act end was actually Tracy killing Galloway with phaser. Second act starts with Tracy capturing Kirk, and of course Kirk tries to flee. So that's where it all starts. The whole episode in the prison is, we will count the number of fistfights and brood about it later on, but for now we're just focusing on the act structure. So it starts off with Kirk captured and him trying to flee, and by the end the savage, quote unquote, tries to help Kirk in breaking loose and getting away from jail. However, at the end he knocks Kirk out cold with the same bar that they loosen up in the cell. So Kirk is out cold, and third act starts with Kirk regaining consciousness. Apparently he was knocked out for 7 hours and 8 minutes, as our trusted Spock tells us. And the third act is all about Kirk again being captured, and a few fistfights later. There was another false act closure when Tracy asked for 10 phasers and I think a few power banks, but a power bank or whatever, phaser banks, but battery packs. However, after the fist fight, they end up being captured by the Yanks. I thought the act had ended, however not. They wake up and or whatever. At least they show another scene, and this whole he figures out that this is not Yanks and Kohms, but it's the Yankees and the communists, and it's Asiatics versus Americans. A whole bunch of things compared, parallels, anti-parallels, everything, and you have suddenly the US flag appears out of nowhere with Star Spangled Banner played in the background. So that's the end. That's the real end of the third act, with the flag making its appearance. Fourth act starts with Cloud Williams announcing who he is and worship words, the US worship words, and Tracy taking them up. He is supposedly evil now. There's Spock, who's also evil, but he's not evil because he's the side of good, but he looks evil. All that happens in the fourth act. And again at the end, last time it was just the Declaration of Independence, I think. This time it was the Constitution that had to be read, and Kirk reads it out, and there's some debate about Prime Directive at the end, and I guess that's the quip. Usually there's a quip at the end. The quip is, oh, we broke the Prime Directive. Ha ha ha, how funny is that? And liberty and freedom, meaning of the words. I guess it has to be serious. Again, Star Spangled Banner to end the fourth act. Okay, so that was the end of that episode. And thankfully it ended. And I don't have to watch it again. So Parvati, what did you think of Zubidi Zubda? No, what is it? Et Plenista.
I think our laughter is the absolute reaction to this episode. I mean, what did I just watch? It's completely confusing. I couldn't follow a lot of the storyline. In the beginning, the first time I watched it, I thought, okay, there's something interesting here because there's some sort of disease.
Exactly. You stole the words out of my mouth. The first act was so awesome.
Yes. And I thought, okay, we've got this disease and we're this strange captain and something is going to happen. And something did happen, but it was so chaotic that I couldn't follow it after that.
No, look at the wow factor that
Yes.
we are only 3 to 4 pounds of chemicals without all that water.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
what happened to the. Why didn't they build on that? It would have been instead we had Kohms versus Yankees and Asiatics versus and Firebird, and oh my god, what a mess.
I thought McCoy would discover some sort of a cure for this disease and we know what it is. And
Yeah,
what
like
did they do
Miri or something like that.
Yes, maybe find some sort of super burgers. But instead, it just went into fist fight after fist fight, and then it ended, like you said, with communists and Yankees. I don't understand how it ended there from where it started. One of the biggest things that really bothered me was how inconsistent Captain Tracy was. In the first act, he was so calm and collected and almost robotic, but he was impressive. Then he goes to being slightly animated and disoriented and God knows what. And after that, once Kirk gets out of prison, he starts talking in a different voice altogether, as though his personality has changed completely. He was so inconsistent and it bothered me. I must say that the one thing I really liked was Spock getting branded as a devil's servant. That was probably the best highlight of this entire episode.
When the episode started, I thought this is going to be amazing because Ron Tracy's reminds me of Matt Decker in Doomsday Machine,
Yes.
where he's lost his entire crew because of a folly in judgment, and Kirk is trying to pacify him, saying, "Hey, error of judgment everyone makes, and you're not alone."
Yeah.
That was so humane, right? So
Yes.
even starship commanders can make mistakes
Yeah.
and lose their entire crew. How cruel, and not entirely their fault sometimes. It's what you make a call with whatever limited data you have.
Yeah.
It shows that vulnerable side of a captain. Here we are, this fellow has forgotten that he's gotten 400 people killed because he sent his landing party back without doing any decontamination or even checking what's going on. And he didn't even try to beam them back aboard. How long did it take? Was it a quick thing? Was it a week long? He didn't do any of that. And here he is after a fountain of youth. It doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
It's inconsistent.
It's very
What
inconsistent.
Ron Tracy is.
It's very inconsistent, and I'm upset that they didn't expand upon that disease and just left it as a red herring. It made no sense. By the time McCoy got to that point where he was explaining that this is probably biological warfare and there's something in nature that negated it, you were rather bored because you had lost the thread of the story by then. For me personally, I was also very concerned about Ron Tracy's inconsistent behavior. It was like there were 3 different characters wearing the same face in each act, which is so bizarre.
I'm going to draw another parallel is with pattern where there's a historian who's gone there to observe and he makes a mistake and the whole thing goes out of whack. We have a parallel with human history, but it goes totally out of whack. He was trying to fix something, but it didn't work. Right? So they could have shown that Ron Tracy now at his fit of rage with himself, of losing his crew. His ship is still up there, but he can't get to it because he feels that is stuck to the planet. All that. He could have tried to influence the Yanks by saying that, hey, there's a parallel history that happened in humans after such a bloody war. Explains the American flag and the Declaration of Independence because there's no explanation. Suddenly you find the flag there. What are the odds of somebody carrying a flag, first of all? Flag being the representative of their values. Second of all, the exact same flag that is light years away and probably millennia separated. How did they get that access to, hundreds of, this is what, 2300 or 2400, right? So this is at least 600 years for them. 600 Earth years in time and God knows how many light years. And still you get the exact same flag with the exact same Declaration of Independence, with the exact same constitution. Oh, come on.
Very unconvincing. And the most bizarre part of all of this is where Kirk is correcting the Yang's pronunciation and saying, those aren't the words, these are the words. I am amazed that so many light years away they all speak English. That he had to,
And this is English, and he said we read it wrong.
it was so bizarre. It was almost like a fever dream and made no sense. And Kirk,
If you're making Ron Tracy the bad guy, make
Yeah.
him the bad guy altogether. And tell him that
Exactly.
he was trying to teach them the Declaration of Independence or whatever, and them not getting it because they don't know English, misunderstanding the words and what it means. But the only thing they got in the whole thing was freedom, and they want to be free of Kohms. And they're going to take revenge on them because of something that happened a long time ago. That makes more sense.
what was Ron Tracy after? Did he want immortality? Did he want domination? What exactly was he after? And like you said, if he had any sort of trauma from the death of his crew, they should have shown it. They didn't show it. So it just came across as completely bizarre that he was down here, all of his crew is dead. He's supposed to be a decorated captain with a reputation. He shows none of it. He's completely out of his depth on this planet, and yet for some reason the Kohms also listen to him. Why? Is it because he looks the way he does? It was pretty infuriating to see that the Kohms were so submissive to him for no reason at all. Apparently they are the civilized, and yet they allow this one solitary infected alien to come in from somewhere else and just take over and lead them to what exactly? War? It just... There were so many loopholes in this episode, and so many instances where potential was wasted that it was sad, actually.
Actually, I have an error to correct. It's the Pledge of Allegiance, not the Declaration of Independence. Okay. So, yeah. Anyway, either way, it's a document from Earth, which is light years away,
Yes.
and probably was created hundreds of years ago on Earth itself. Now that reaching this planet to so-called savages and them treating as if it's it worshipping it and keeping it to the chief alone. Yes, I can see the parallel, but you can make it a parallel and not the exact same thing. That's my only complaint. And they could have used, just like how they set this up in Piece of the Action, right? They call that culture a mimicking culture.
Yes,
so which means that anything that is believable, right? Because they are a mimicking culture. They're going to mimic everything.
Exactly.
Fine. That makes that Chicago setup very believable.
Yes. There's no consistency. Why have they, and most importantly, how have they come across these documents? Why do they all speak English that Kirk can correct? Why is it the exact same wording? Why do they have the flag? If they had given some sort of explanation, like in A Piece of the Action, like they're a mimicking culture, or they're a culture that somehow adapts to, or maybe Ron Tracy himself introduced all of these things, but they didn't do any of that in the story. It was just left to the imagination, and unfortunately my imagination doesn't stretch that far. I couldn't figure out what happened.
I just wonder if this is the first time they mentioned the phrase prime directive, or because they've mentioned the in the other one, right, where they introduced flintlocks and all that. They shouldn't interfere with the local culture. But do they actually mention the phrase the prime directive?
Didn't they mention it in A Piece of the Action, actually? Because we had a similar instance of contamination, interference, and bringing them back to their own culture. So yeah, I think it was mentioned over there also, the prime directive.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the prime directive. It's taken to the extreme. Kirk, one extreme, he is willing to sacrifice the ship, himself, the crew, to fulfill the prime directive. And then you have Tracy, on the other hand, who sacrifices everything to violate the prime directive. Now, if you had focused on that, we might have had another good story. But that was also mentioned just in passing, like the disease, whatever it was. It's just in passing, because the main focus of the story ultimately was Kirk correcting the Yangs, bringing the pronunciation up to speed, giving them the right words, and then, yeah, the flag.
Okay. It turns out that this prime directive is referred to in Bread and Circuses, the episode that where we'll talk about. A private little war, that is what I was talking about. Patterns, yes, of course, they do mention that. But I don't, again, I have to do my research whether they mention the phrase or not and where they mentioned it and all that. Do that part of research. Wolf in the fold as well, apparently. I don't know why. Oh, subverting or avoiding the application of a society's laws.
Okay.
That's one cause, prime directive. Patterns, of course, we saw that. So interesting. They talk about prime directive, but at the end, he just shushes the whole thing and brushes it away and says, "Oh yeah, you think me explaining the meaning to that is violating it? It's not really. Let's move."
And I don't think Spock was given screen time. He was just, I mean,
Yeah.
there were some moments, especially when Kirk was in jail getting hammered by those Yangs. Spock was very helpful giving him statistics and various other pieces of information. But
Yeah, levity, I think he was there for that. But I think the one serious thing he tries to do is, what's her name? She has one line in the entire episode. Saying yes, it is written. That's her only line in the entire episode. She gets mind mangled by Spock, and she lifts the communicator and calls Sulu, and they come there.
He wasn't really given much screen time here for some reason, so it's mostly for levity and being branded as the devil's assistant or servant. That was his role.
Yeah. And he didn't spend much time figuring out how to make that medical device into a communication device. He just I think flipped a few switches and it was all set. And of course, Tracy destroys it. That's another story. That was one more of his accomplishments in this.
Yes.
Oh yeah, he nerve pinches that woman. Sira is her name.
Kirk got hit over the head. Ultimately, that's what happened.
Yeah, that didn't help.
That didn't help at all.
Yeah,
ultimately, Kirk just had himself hit over the head.
Yeah.
Which was one of the many illogical things in this episode. So, maybe after that hit in the head, that's why he wanted to correct their pronunciation. That would be a very plausible reason. You got hit on the head, now let me correct everybody's pronunciation.
Now, I thought the one bright spot in this entire episode was Shatner's delivery. I'm not, because I am really frustrated about what is happening. Maybe Shatner himself was frustrated about the episode. Maybe that came through in his character. I don't know. At the time, he now has dual citizenship. I don't know. Back then, he's a Canadian. So I don't know. And he had to recite everything from the US Constitution and the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm not sure if that was something. Yes, it's a part he has to play, but was he angry about it? Why is he bringing this here? Maybe he's not too happy about that part.
He did.
But as a captain, it is his hesitation in arresting Tracy, because they address each other by first name. So I'm guessing they know each other already. Because he does describe Tracy as a good officer or something like that.
He does.
Mature captain.
Ron Tracy. And he did the best he could given these circumstances, because first of all, you are infected by this disease. You have Tracy who's acting like different people at different times, and you can't really follow what he wants. And you have these violently savage Yangs who proceed to hit him over the head. The minute he starts to trust them just a bit, they hit him over the head. And to top it all, they have atrocious pronunciation which he must correct, which is probably from the hit on the head. He has done the best he could given the circumstances. He also has to deal with a lot of Spock's jibes. Not jibes, helpful information at all the wrong times. I think as captain, he managed to pull things together. It's just that the story did not come together as well as it could have.
In fact, I find it hard to believe because from Ed Dibny's Plenista, how does he get we the people? I have no idea. I couldn't figure that one out. And neither could I figure out the first one that he said. I forgot what he said. And he says, "Oh, you mean?" And he recites the rest of it. It
Yep.
didn't sound at all like what the Pledge of Allegiance looked like. I mean, I looked at the words and it didn't sound like them at all. How does he tell that it was those words? It was those words that he had to say. And he is referring to that.
They seemed so far removed, I couldn't connect them either. As in, how did he make out that these were the words, and here's where I have to split those words that the Yangs were speaking to make it coherent? How did he make out that this is what they were saying? This is exactly what they were saying. And let me supply the rest of the information based on some gibberish that they were saying. Yeah. It was a bit confusing. I don't know how he managed to extract all those words from the mangled, garbled speech of William. Yeah, the chief.
Yeah, here is what Cloud Williams says. I'm reading it off Memory Alpha. I plegli ianek tu flaggen, tupep like for stan. Now, how does that become and to the republic for which it stands?
I think we're a little short on intelligence. I mean, Kirk could do it. Kirk has a PhD in gibberish, I feel like, because how do you make
And how did
words
Ed Libny become, what is that, we the people?
I don't know how the Yangs came up with the exact same words which Kirk happened to do. Very clever.
And now, how does Cloud William know that and to the republic for which it stands is the exact thing he was saying? How does it? He's been saying.
And given this,
How does he know what Kirk is saying the right thing? The same thing.
and given the state of their development, how does Cloud William even know what nation, republic, and God mean? And how does he know that he's probably hearing the right words for the first time and accepts Kirk as a god? I would think that because of their state of civilization at the moment after the war, both the Yangs and the Kohms are basically Stone Age peoples. If you say something like republic to them, it would make absolutely no sense. It would confuse them. But William just accepts it as truth, as the absolute truth. He doesn't even question what Kirk is saying. Logically, he should have found Kirk's corrections as nonsensical as his words were to us. But none of that happened.
Maybe you can help me here.
Yeah.
So this fountain of youth thing doesn't exist. Okay, that's what he's saying.
Correct.
But how does McCoy justify that by saying there's no fountain of youth? I did not get that. So he's saying this guy is 462 years old. Okay, his dad is thousands of years old, 1,000 years old. Okay, got it.
Yep.
But he's saying no, we humans cannot do that. McCoy does say, oh, what with the good intentions, I can probably cure the common cold, which is a good joke. But I don't get why you can't take what makes these guys live for 462 years old to the humans. Did you get what that was all about?
The only logical sense I could make of that is maybe he's saying that because these guys are ultimately not human and their lifespans are maybe different. And the other thing is, what I could gather from McCoy's strange speech over there was that nature on that planet, in an attempt to counteract the biological warfare that these guys had managed to come up with a solution that ultimately eradicated all diseases, because that was the only way to eradicate this
it makes
disease.
sense. Okay, finally something that is logical in this episode. That is basically the warfare was biological warfare that they let out on themselves. Probably the cost, quote unquote, of that was that it produced a race which was immune to all of this. The survivors of that, so much so that they could actually survive hundreds of years and up to 1,000 years without a problem, because whatever the biological warfare did was to make them immune to everything possible, absolutely every disease possible.
Yes, and it also seems that whatever cure this planet's environment came up with extends to visitors because they are also immune to the disease. But it is not explained whether Kirk and the crew are finally free of the common cold. It doesn't explain that. Or it also does not explain whether this cure that the nature of this planet has come up with works. It's not clear whether it works well on a human body, but we are supposed to just take that at face value.
In fact, parallel the Bertrand race by any other name, all they had to do was stay for 7 days and longer, and the effect would just go off. It's those rays which make it really bad or really good for opposite of that. 7 days is all you could stay there. After that, you had to leave because now the rays can be deadly to anybody who's visiting. But the spores made you resist that. The effect of the Bertrand. That's why these guys lived longer there. However, in this case, it's probably the opposite, which is the rays or whatever is there in nature is making them live and resist whatever comes their way, and they can live longer. So, as long as you're there and nature is giving you that shield comfort, but once you leave, you're back to whatever your original immunity is.
Yeah, but doesn't McCoy also say that we are immune to this disease and we can go back to the Enterprise? Yes. He does say that.
But
some of the effects of this immunization seems to last longer, apparently.
I think I see the flaw that you're trying to hint at. That is, if they're immunized against all of these diseases here, so if they go back and the immunization is gone somehow, shouldn't they die because they have the infection?
And it would also spread.
And spread on the Enterprise. No
everybody
serum.
Aboard the Enterprise would get reduced to these waterless crystals. There's a gap
But
there.
if the Enterprise, they are immunized.
Correct.
Is that what they're trying to say?
It doesn't.
So since the episode doesn't make sense. Come on, Parvati, you had to take it away from me.
I'm sorry. I didn't make much sense out of it, and misery loves company.
It was my MD star. And you had to come along and say the right word, we the people. Oh my God. Now I have to stand corrected. This episode doesn't make any sense. Okay. So, as a part of our show, we do talk about likes and dislikes. Is there anything at all we like about this show?
Yeah, there is one thing I absolutely liked. I liked that Spock was branded the servant of the devil. That was the highlight for me in this entire episode, watching Spock being branded the servant of the devil. That was very entertaining for me. I actually liked the beginning where there was suspense of trying to figure out what happened to the people aboard the Exeter and trying to make sense of the whole thing, because they have disappeared but they have not disappeared. They are dead but you can't really find their bodies. That was quite chilling. That was probably the one thing that I really liked, because once they beamed down to the planet, things went downhill pretty quickly. What about you?
That one thing, the start, the teaser, the first few minutes of the first act is definitely something that I thought was a very promising start. Pretty much after that, I'm just looking through my notes saying, is there anything at all I liked? Even joke was predictable. McCoy trying to do something and reaching out for a glass. Is trying to escape, obviously, but the guy is sleeping right there. When he knows he will try to escape. Even that was very predictable and wasn't even funny. Sulu was clueless. I mean, I thought Scotty would be there, but Sulu turned up. They didn't do anything clever with that exchange. Tracy, Kirk and Sulu could have done something very clever there, where Kirk passes on a message which only Sulu can figure out, but Tracy has no idea.
Yes, they did that, right? In A Piece of the Action, he did that with Scotty. He gave
with Scotty he did that.
I wish he'd done something like that. You're correct. Yes.
Something like that, like maybe because Sulu is so much into swords and all that, he could have said, "Send me some swords" or something like that, saying that he's in danger but not conveying. But that one just fizzled out in no time. And back to fist fight number 565. So we've been talking the entire episode. our podcast episode.
I don't think they could do any more with that.
Spock apparently has tried to teach Kirk how to nerve pinch, but Kirk hasn't learnt it. That's what we learned from this. Maybe that's something. I don't know. Okay, that was it. I'm done. So, do we really want to ask our screenwriter if they appear in this? Do we really have to ask them anything?
Maybe we could ask them if they could rewrite it.
Apparently, it was rewritten so many times. It was branded as a bad episode. NBC didn't like it. Roddenberry tried to spruce it up. He took it up as a personal challenge and wanted to make it. Several other episodes were chosen ahead of it. There's a big history there going back and forth and back and forth. Nobody liked it. It was really left. And in fact, it's voted or meted out to be the number 9 worst episode or something. I wonder what are the other. I thought this is number 1. Yes, because I was quite surprised that there are 8 ahead of this.
Well, considering there's a season 3, I assume that a lot of them would have come from season 3 because season 3 is a little problematic.
Oh yeah. Okay, anyway, I think somehow we had fun discussing this episode and we're done with it. Thank you so much, Parvati, for discussing this episode, Gobbledygook, and we're done with Gobbledygook. Okay. All right, listeners, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you and bye.
Bye, everyone.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening to the podcast Enterprise. Please do share your reviews with us and please share this podcast with any of your writing friends or trickies. Live long and prosper.